Hello everyone, my name is Jaybird and welcome back to Lake of Voices. Yep. Yep. The two of us make our way over to where we left Lou as hastily as the thick forest will allow. Unfortunately, there's no... Sorry, I'm moving around a little bit. I'm getting in a more comfortable position. I should have done that before. Unfortunately, there's nothing to see but shrubbery upon our arrival. Lou must have gone elsewhere. And that is not the only disappointment. The pouch I gave him rests squarely in the dirt, still puffed up with what is presumably all the food inside.
What does he think he's accomplishing by doing this?
Margaret mutters in annoyance while shaking her head. That's not muttering, that's speaking full volume. I scan the area for any signs of Lou while Margaret bends down to retrieve the pouch. She squints her eyes and holds the object close to her face to examine the contents.
It seems like the food is still clean at least.
She stands and her frustration gives way to fear as the mystery of what could have happened settles in her mind.
Say Lou isn't being difficult. What if something is wrong? Should we have left him alone?
She looks towards me, and her voice grows more frantic with each word.
That's not what happened, right? I'm overreacting, aren't I?
Probably, yeah. Calm your tits, dude. I can't say anything in the distance. I can see it. Among white fog and black water, a flicker of color drifts. A green scarf. Oh no. Oh no, not Lou. Not my Lou. Not Lou, the best one. Not Lou. Anything but Lou. You took the hot guy. You took another hot guy away from me. I'm not okay right now. My Lou. Oh no. Margaret shouts beside me. She must have noticed as well. Margaret grasps my arm numbingly tight.
What are we supposed to do? Lou can't be out there. He must have dropped his scarf with the food and it blew away.
I place my hand on hers and grip it firmly.
We need to search the forest. We can't go anywhere near the shore.
Margaret nods adamantly, her fingers trembling.
Lou? Where are you?
I look to the forest and tug Margaret to lead her. We make our way to the tree line. There's rustling. The leaves part and all hope within me dies. It's the guide. My hands go numb, a ringing throughout my body, channeling into them. My arms fall limply to my sides.
Have you seen Lou?
So, you noticed?
He's missing.
No. You know exactly where he is. He's gone.
Margaret covers her mouth with her hands. Her voice dies to a whisper.
No.
I'm utterly speechless. We just saw Lou. He was fine.
How?
Yeah, how? The word is not a question, but a concise demand. Margaret feels we are owed an answer, and the guide will provide it.
In some areas there aren't sandy shores. Instead, the thick forested areas lead right into the waterline. Also, since the water is so dense, oftentimes debris settles on top. It can cover what's beneath completely, making it look as though it's still part of the shore when it actually isn't.
Ah.
Those are only a few ways someone could get too close for safety.
And why couldn't you have mentioned any of those little details?
He doesn't reply.
Well?
Margaret continues digging in deeper and deeper, pushing for a reason for this. Knowing why won't make it better, but I feel that she hopes it does. But I feel that she hopes it will.
If you were aware of all that and kept it to yourself, then that means all of this is your fault. You might as well have pushed Lou into the lake with your own two hands.
The guide looks absolutely furious over the accusation.
And just how do you know it was an accident? No one heard any signs of struggle.
Lou wouldn't have killed himself.
No, he would. The guide glares at the both of us and mutely snarls.
You didn't know that man. You should have never gotten involved with him. He wasn't your responsibility.
He finishes his sentence full of malice. I snap out of my stupor, feeling the tension growing between the two.
This isn't helping anything!
The guide closes his eyes for a few seconds and sighs in frustration.
We'll never know for sure what the truth is. It isn't something we should allow to distract us until we have made it to the other side.
Margaret stitches... Achievement unlocked. Sorry. It's a picture of Louis and looks sad. Sorry. Margaret stitches her mouth shut and glares at the guide crossly. He stares back for a moment before turning his back to us and disappearing into the forest. Once he is gone, Margaret drops her face into her hands. I stand stone still. How could we have let this happen? He was right there with us. We were with him during the day on the island only an hour ago or so ago. How? Margaret turns her gaze, now hardened and running with grief, towards me.
If that's how that guide is going to be, then maybe I should still become one.
What?
I startle at the recklessness of her words.
I understand that you can't always save everyone, and that difficult decisions must be made. But this isn't right. He could have done so much more, yet he didn't bother for no reason.
I gaze at her sorrowfully. I don't want to see someone I care so much about spend their life on this lake, but I know that it's not my place to tell her otherwise.
I'm going back to the forest. You should come with me.
Yes.
That, at least, is a decision I can agree with wholeheartedly. I feel that there aren't many of those left. And it's only getting worse the further and further we get from the lake's other shore. I look back towards the scarf once more. I realize that it's gone. Tears well up in my eyes. I silently continue my walk towards the meeting point. Our thoughts not anymore at ease. We arrive where we are meant to meet the guide. The guide is there, waiting as still and as dark as the trees he's surrounded by. Margaret gazes at him coolly, but doesn't say anything to him. I'm not sure what to say either. As we approach, he finally speaks.
It's almost time.
And nothing else is said. All three of us wait in a deep, miserable silence until night falls. Night settles like a shroud over the land, every inch of the world now covered in unrelenting darkness. Suddenly there is a gurgling. The water parts at the bridge as the bridges of Sinlos rise, powered by some unnatural force, creaking like they might fall apart. I feel an inexplicable pounding like a hammer in the back of my head, beating faster and heavier than my own heart. I clench my teeth to stop it from churning my stomach.
We must go now.
The guide doesn't wait for any replies, briskly starting in the direction of the shore. Margaret and I match his pace. I can feel the air weighing on us, a sensation that slows our steps despite being rested. Something hovers in my mind, the mirrored memory of the beginning of last night's journey. One day ago feels like a lifetime past. The thick, inky water sloshes reluctantly off of the boards, bleeding back into the lake until finally it becomes still. A shudder crawls over my body as I place my foot on the boards, but I quickly shake it off. I have no other option. We have to go through this again. All tense as day-old corpses, we walk over the bridges in silence. The only sound that accompanies us is the thick lapping of the water at the bridge. Margaret marches ahead of me so I can't view her face. However, even from the back, I feel that something's on her mind. I decide not to ask about it. It wasn't meant for me to hear. Ugh. It feels as though barely any time has passed when it is explained that half the night has crept by. We encountered a few sunken bridges which forced us reroute, while other paths were rotten enough to make us stagger our steps. However, the biggest threat of all is eerily absent, the prowlers. I haven't seen more than shadowy glimpses of them down other paths, and even those may have simply been tricks of the fog. I feel I may be even worse. What? I can't read, I'm sorry. I feel I may be even more on edge tonight than the last. Judging by Margaret's tenseness, she isn't set at ease by their lack of presence either.
Why?
I whisper the question softly, almost silently, as I scan left and right across the impossibly empty bridges for any sign of movement. I ponder whether they're still weary from the consuming blaze that lit up the night of yesterday, or if they are less dragging themselves across the bridges than usual because many have already gotten what they wanted. My skin crawls with the touch of icy fingers at the thought, and I can't control the sharp shiver that travels down my spine. Margaret catches my concern as she slows her walking somewhat.
It's very quiet out here. I haven't heard anything but our footsteps since we started.
Yes.
She seems a tad disappointed by the brusque, and by my brusque, I don't know an answer, but Margaret quickly refocuses and continues walking. As time passes by, we continue to see nothing but more bridges and fog. Beside me, Margaret eyes the guide sharply. She begins to question him.
How do you know where you're going?
Her tone is harsh and clipped. He doesn't answer, prompting her to continue.
I heard that it's impossible to create a map of the bridges because they can change. I can understand that since I've seen them sink partway through the night myself. But I'm curious, how exactly are you able to tell that we're going the correct way?
Because I remember.
Remember what exactly?
She huffs to herself at the notion.
All these bridges look exactly the same.
But they aren't the same.
He replies immediately this time, addressing Margaret's line of questioning head-on despite having his back to us.
How many boards there are, the angle they curve at, the width. There are ways to tell them apart. It isn't the bridges alone either. There are signs in the water and even with the way the air feels. As little as there is, everything here can be a marker, as long as one is actually committed to keeping it in mind.
I see.
Despite wanting to dismiss the guide, she does seem focused enough to be making mental notes on everything he's explained about the maze. She slowly falls into step with me, seemingly satisfied with the partial conversation she had been having with the guide.
It is still terribly difficult to navigate this dreadful place without my glasses.
You're going to be all right.
I firmly reassure her, however, she merely scoffs again.
Perhaps not with a leader like him.
Ooh, burn! Her tone grows more annoyed.
I wonder how many people have needlessly died because he was the only person around to show them the way.
Fewer than those who have died without him. Margaret raises her eyebrows and her frown tightens.
I cannot say with certainty that the guide has always made wise decisions. However, there isn't enough evidence for us to state that he takes his position lightly, or that one would be better off without him.
She pauses for a moment, entertaining the viewpoint.
Perhaps. I still think that things could be far better.
Finishing that thought, she resumes her normal pace again. Ugh. Our progress continues steadily, and we still encounter no significant difficulties. Margaret has drifted further away from me and closer to the guide. He turns his head slightly to address her.
You're following too closely.
I expect her to step back and nothing to come from this. However, instead Margaret dismissively snipes back.
I'm not at all within an arm's reach of you.
The guide abruptly stops walking and Margaret accidentally ends up getting even closer to him.
You're close enough. Stay further behind.
He's far firmer in his demand this time, without highlighting how clearly the point was made. Margaret regards the guide defiantly and stands her ground. He narrows his eyes at the turn of events.
If you're not happy with how I lead, then continue on by yourself.
I start to feel concern creep in. The lack of trust between them has grown dangerously high, and with the way they're speaking, I fear that it could escalate further.
We should remain as a single group.
Margaret ignores me completely while remaining unfazed by the guide directly addressing the concerns she had voiced.
It's rather hard to respect a leader who eavesdrops on conversations.
His jaw clenches as she tests his patience.
Either you are to lead yourself, or you will follow my path. Those are your choices. Say which one it will be.
Oh, so both options are to die then.
Oh my god. Stop, please. That biting comment makes me wince, as I fear the situation is spiraling further down and any words to stop its descent cannot be found in my racing thoughts.
If you enter these bridges, all you should expect is death. That is no secret.
The guide continues, annoyance leaking into his voice.
You think that the results would have been different if only I had said more or did something differently, but that is not true. The conclusion would be exactly the same. If Lou hadn't died when he did, he would have been lost at some other point during the trip.
That sounds like excuses to me.
Ooh! Margaret raises her voice.
You're adept enough to traverse these bridges so often that you've memorized the minute details of them, but you couldn't help him? Why are you the only one who gets to avoid death here?
Because you're one of them. He's one of them, Margaret. He's one of them. The guide's face twists into a vicious snarl. He shouts,
I have died!
"Oh my god! You're gonna wake up the children. I don't know what children, but you're gonna wake them up."
I have no life to give. Everything I am, everything I could have been, was surrendered to this lake. That is the only reason why I'm able to stand before you now. I can show you the way, and I can give you advice on how to survive the perils you will face. That is all I'm able to offer.
Let me show you the way. You do not know the way. Do you know the way? You do not know the way. You do not smell like Ebola. You do not know the way. Queen. Sorry.
Is that not enough for you? What else do you want from me?
I'm sorry for bringing up dead January memes from 2018. Forgive me.
Kindness, sympathy. It's been far too many years since I was capable of giving anything like that.
He finally stops to catch his breath, though the emotion in his eyes still shines intently. There is no response from either of us. An agonizing silence permeates the air. No one dares to even move. The tension is cut as the boards beneath me start to creak. My eyes are down. The bridge is sinking! Rapidly, instinctively, I jump backwards. But the new section of bridge groans horribly as it too starts to tilt into the water. They keep getting farther and farther away with each disappearing platform I move off of.
Wait!
I look up at Margaret's frantic call. My chest tightens when I see her and the guide on what has become the other side of a small chasm. I leap back just in time as the bridge under me snaps like a twig. Glancing over again, they keep getting farther and farther away with each disappearing platform I move off of. Dread creeps up my neck, and I nearly lose my footing once I realize what's happening. Desperately stumbling backwards, I finally manage to regain my balance. I use this to leap far enough back that the bridge I land on doesn't immediately start to fall apart under my weight. In another 3 swift steps, I am finally on sturdy wood. The bridges reluctantly stop shifting and settle. The only trace left of what was once a huge section of bridge is a few splintered boards floating in the murky water. The lake consumed it. Somehow I am not surprised. Regaining my bearings, I face what has become of my circumstances. I am now separated from Margaret and the guide by a far wider gorge than anyone could leap. My throat goes bone dry as I teeter at the end of the bridge, mind wildly scrambling for a solution that doesn't come. I lock onto Margaret's face. She's completely aghast, wringing her hands and opening her mouth wordlessly. She has little idea of what to do with herself. I'm not quite sure what to do with myself either. Margaret keeps her eyes on me, but I can faintly hear her address the guide. I'm too far off to grasp what Margaret is asking, but I get the impression she is seeing if there's another way. The guide turns to me. He's completely cooled down from the earlier interaction, back to his same placid expression. The guide says one word. Judging from the look of heartbreak on Margaret's face, I can only assume it was no. There's no way back to them. As I watch the two discuss my fate, unable to say anything, fear starts to crawl over me. My arms run cold to freezing. It's not long before the rest of my body follows. Tears drip down Margaret's face. I can see the delicate lantern light playing off them, even from here. The guide's voice echoes loudly across the water, separating me from them.
Go back and take the next bridge you come across that goes west. There may be enough time for you to find your own way.
I blink, taken aback for a moment, before I quickly regain my composure. That's right, this isn't over. I still have my lantern with me. The prowlers are less active, and if the guide says that it's possible, it could be true. I nod solemnly at his words and yell back,
I'll meet you there! Don't wait for me!
He bows his head and starts to slowly back away from the edge. Margaret tries and fails to dry her eyes as she looks at me helplessly from across the waters. I detest the idea of having to part ways with Margaret, however I know that there's no other way. I smile forlornly at her as the wind whips against my back. Wisps. I speak softly.
You need to go.
There's no way she could have heard me, yet I'm confident that the sentiment got across. I spin on my heels and run back the way we came, searching for the bridge the guide said to take. I can only hope that we all safely reunite before this night ends. I spare a brief glance behind me. However, there's not a trace of them or even the dead end I was stranded at. With a painful contracting of my heart, I realize that I am truly alone now. Quickly, I shake off the thought and refocus my attention on what's in front of me. The first branching of the path comes into reach. I slow down to a calmer pace and begin my progress down the western bridge. It would be reckless to consider going against the guide's directions. Well, guys, that's going to be it for this episode of A Lake of Voices. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this episode and would like to see more of this game, then leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't, ring that notification bell, and remember, die safely. Bye-bye!